She is a senior policy analyst with the Illinois Policy Institute. Kind of talk about where we are with things, what is needed for these pension plans to be fully funded, and what is proposed. Thank you for your time.
Of course. Thanks so much for having me. I think the easiest way to think about what's happening in the Illinois budget right now is that the state of Illinois is making a minimum payment on a maxed out credit card and calling that fiscal responsibility. So the state is putting about $11.6 billion towards pensions this year because that is what a 1995 funding law called the Edgar Ramp requires. But the experts who actually calculated what's needed to pay down the debt say Illinois would need to pay just over $17 billion this year and every year for the next 20 years if they wanted pensions to be fully funded. And so there's a $5.4 billion gap.
Minimum payment, maxed out credit card. Usually that's because people can't figure out how to, where to cut in order to try to, catch up. So what are some proposed options?
Yeah, so I think that the biggest thing that lawmakers need to have is fiscal responsibility. And what that means is reducing your spending. Don't look for ways to increase how much you're spending on that credit card. And just this session, we had lawmakers discussing hiking Tier 2 benefits, which is a benefit system that was created in order to mitigate this pension crisis that we were in years ago. If we hike those benefits back, we're going to be in exactly the same position. And so rather than looking for ways to hike benefits, which reduce retirement security for Tier 2 retirees, they should be looking for ways to give workers options and flexibility. And so a couple of those solutions would be things like the pension buyout program. Currently, this is something available to retirees at the state level, and it allows them to take a one-time lump sum payment instead of getting payments each month throughout their retirement at a discounted rate. And so what that offers for retirees is the flexibility to use that money and invest that money as they see fit, like if they had a 401k and wanted to take out a lump sum. And for the state, that's giving a discount, and it's saved the state to date a couple $2 billion already. And right now, a bill to extend that for another 2 years is set to be heard in the Senate. And so hopefully they pass that and the governor signs that bill into law. Another option would be to create 401k style plans for people to opt into. Right now, the state university's retirement system gives this option, and they've seen record high numbers of new employees opting in because the reality is that pensions were designed for people that want to stay in a career for 20 plus years, and most of the modern workforce, especially young people, don't want that anymore. So giving them the options that work for them rather than hiking benefits and keeping everyone stuck in this pension trap.
You mentioned two things that were in my mind as we began this conversation, new employees and younger employees, and how generations shift. And I wonder if, the long-standing issues regarding the pension plans here in the state of Illinois, is that a turnoff for younger employees? Are we losing younger employees seeing or feeling like that's not going to be around for me?
Not only is it a turnoff for younger employees, I would say it's a turnoff for everyone in the state, regardless of whether they are employed by the state or they're privately employed. When families have to choose between funding these ever-growing pension obligations and making the basic purchases for groceries, for gas, to keep their families afloat, they're going to find a way to leave the state. And that is why we saw nearly 83,000 Illinoisans leave for lower tax states in 2024. And that's going to keep happening unless lawmakers are willing to make the tough choices to get this pension debt under control.
Is only doing what's obligated by the law possibly a kind of tapping on the brakes instead of going full stop to try to get it under control?
It's not doing enough. And every single year that they choose to pay less than what's actuarially required, it's getting us deeper and deeper into this hole. This year, when actuaries said we need over $17 billion to pay down the debt in 20 years, a few years ago, it was $14 billion. A few years after that, it was $15 billion. And we can see that number continue to grow, and the budget get tighter and tighter. And so at a certain point, we can no longer just make the minimum payments required. We have to actually make the necessary decisions to pay down the debt, not just for future generations of Illinois families, but also for the workers in this system who have the option hanging over their head that one day they're going to get a call that says, we don't have enough money in these pension systems to make your payments. And we've seen that happen in Detroit and San Bernardino. And we don't want Illinois to be another story added to that list.
And a part of this goes into our credit ranking, correct?
Yes. Yes. Illinois' credit ranking is quite low, and the people that decide the credit ranking have said that changes to the pension system, such as increases to tier 2, would play a role in potentially decreasing our credit ranking.
I think one of the hard things, though, when it comes to pension systems, has to do with who we're talking about here. Like, who falls under the pension system, and especially maybe some of the higher profile careers that fall under this.
Yeah, the pension system affects a lot of our public sector workers and public servants. So police and fire, they are all under the pension system, whether in the city of Chicago or downstate, and their pensions are frequently some of the less funded pension systems. Those people deserve a secure retirement. Also, university professors, teachers, you also have the lawmakers who have their own pension system. And so every time that we say that we're not going to fully fund these pension systems and make the necessary changes to ensure that this is an amount that taxpayers can keep up with, we are making them have an insecure retirement.
Let me ask you this. I mean, have you all, in doing your research, have you all taken this to Springfield? You know, is this who is proposing this, or the options that you talked about, to the governor, and what has the response been?
Yes, the governor had a slate of solutions, a mixed bag. Some were very good, like expanding the buyout program for another 2 years in order to continue getting savings at the state level. Others are simply continuing to kick the can down the road. And the solutions that are laid out, some have more political buy-in, such as the pension buyout. Others still need some convincing, like the optional 401k plans. Ultimately, it's a matter of realizing that truly helping people that are in this pension system means giving them more options and flexibility. So if you're a teacher and you want to teach for a few years, it's really unfair to say to a young person, especially entering the teaching profession, that unless you stay here for 10 years, you get no retirement benefits. You get a reimbursement of what you paid into the system, but you don't get any of the employer contributions. That's unfair, because that is not how people think about their careers, especially in this day and age.
There have been some who, obviously, you know, with anything, you're going to have some people who praise it, some people who criticize it. And there have been some who have championed the take that Governor Pritzker has on this, and that does include some labor unions on this. And there's also the fact that we're not the only state that's kind of proposed this way of, I don't know if getting by would be the term, but the math that they're doing the same type of math here. Can you address that, the fact that there are some states that are finding this the way to go?
I would say there are also a lot of states that have managed to make moderate reforms in order to get things back on the right track. And I think that Illinois families, especially with how many people are leaving our state and the tax obligation that we continue to burden Illinois people under, that we deserve better than just the status quo. And that's exactly what they continue to do with underpaying the pension system, and Illinois families deserve better than that. I'm
seeing even, let's say, under the labor unions, okay? State labor unions and some public employees that support it say that this is kind of the it's short-term pain, long-term goal here for a secure retirement. With some back proposals that bring, as you said, the tier 2 employees in line with requirements along the way. So, there are different ways always of looking at it. We always want to be able to look from different sides of this. But obviously, again, it's one of the issues that comes up time and time again to be addressed.
Yeah, I think that when we talk about retirement security, it's important to acknowledge that there are two sides of this coin when we're thinking about it. It's the benefits that each person is receiving, and then there's the stability of the system. When we look at the benefits that retirees are receiving, they're great. Tier 2 for long-term employees, so that's employees that pensions were designed to benefit, employees staying for 15, 20, 25 years, a full career. They're replacing their end of career salaries. They're replacing about 70%, which is pretty good for most pension systems. They're getting an automatic cost of living adjustment every year, which not every state, even in the Midwest, some of our neighbors don't have that. Where all of the risk comes from and insecurity comes from is the state of our pension system's funding. How long will it take us to pay down the debt, which is over 20 years because the state is not meeting that actuarially determined contribution? How much of a burden on taxpayers is it making? And so we have to fix that side of things in order for retirements to be secure across the state of Illinois.
Mm-hmm. And let me, just on a final note, ask you, okay, let's say the amount, the $17 billion that's supposed to be going to pensions is actually happening. Have you all assessed what would be at risk for that $5.4 billion or so that's not in the current budget if it's moved there? Like, are there some services essentially that would get cut in order to fully fund the pensions?
Right now, across the state, we are seeing services cut. I think the city of Harvey is a perfect example. They were unable to keep up with their pension obligations, and so services had to be cut in order to continue paying the pension debt. And so it's better to make those short-term cuts now, make the hard decisions, as you said before, right now, rather than having to make harder decisions in the long run, whether that is cutting services that we can no longer afford to keep up with, cutting people's jobs, or even cutting retirements if it gets to the point of insolvency.
Yeah, tough decisions all around. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.